Now what we want to do is dress up the page a little bit more, maybe change the font. And of course, in doing that, I'm going to demonstrate the necessity of cascading style sheets language and how it makes our life easier. And so up to this point, us developing this, when we get done talking about it, it's something we would have wanted to know before we started developing the page. Because you're going to, when we get done talking about everything, you'll understand what you need to implement and when. So this is something that we would want to know before we start writing code or before we start developing web pages. So we've gotten to this point. So let's solidify the need for style sheets. So we're almost done talking about HTML. The syntax of it is the angle brackets, the closing and opening tags we've talked about. We've looked at attributes. And so now it's time to kind of move forward towards CSS and incorporating it into the language. And then we get done talking about that, we'll start talking about JavaScript and how it can add behaviors to our pages. And we'll get into some really slick stuff that'll look really cool. So within a very brief period of time here, we'll have you up and running and typing in some things that make your life easier. Now, you'll want to do some more research on details about JavaScript and so forth as you start to do things, but understanding the document object model and all of that when we get there will be important too. So we'll cover all of that and get you set up to where you'll know where to get the information as you need it as you move forward. And of course, we cover these things in more detail in other courses also. So let's get down to business. Let's take a look here. Let's go back into our homepage.html file. And just after the body tag, we're going to add a font tag. And again, we're still in HTML right now. We're not doing any CSS just yet. We're going to get to that in just a second. I'm going to put in a font face Arial and then close or complete the tag there. And then way down here at the bottom, I'd already typed it in earlier when I was setting this up. We have a font closing tag right above the body tag here, the closing body tag. So what I'm saying is that all the content in between that opening and closing tag should be a face of Arial on the font. This is an HTML tag, one that you probably won't be using after you see the CSS stuff. In fact, it's being deprecated by the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, to not be used in lieu of style sheets. So you'll see rules inside of tools. This has been deprecated in lieu of style sheets. It's because you want to really map things together a little better, and using style sheets we can do that. But let's take a look at what this does. Let's do a file save and hit refresh. Cool. So my text is Arial now. If I click the link here, it's not Arial on this page. No big deal, right? I can just go back into that file, my second page.html, and I can add my font tag to it. And of course, come down to just above the body tag down here and close my font tag and do a file save. And now I've got some consistency between two of my pages. I've got my home page looks like that, and my second page looks like that. Everybody's really happy now. Okay, well that's all nice and dandy. Every time I make a change to one page, I just go and implement the same page change to the other page, right? Well, let's pretend for a moment that we have a pretty good size website with, I don't know, hundreds of products that we're selling. And each web page could have its own detailed.html file for the products. Whenever I go to change a layout on one page, I have to apply that same change to all of my web pages. So let's assume we have 50 different web pages. That's a lot of copy and paste on a lot of documents, saving them, re-uploading them up to the web server, and it becomes a big mess. Cascading style sheets offer us the ability to prevent that from happening if we set up our first initial page template with the right mechanisms in place. So first of all, let's review real quick. We've talked about HTML. We have opening tags and closing tags, and they wrap around stuff, and they are instructions to the browser to do things. Now, there are an abundant number of different types of tags. Yes. Would we want to learn more about those tags? You will as you use the tools to develop with. I would never ask somebody to build web pages with Notepad. That's just ridiculous. And I would never expect a web developer in their first year or even 6 months or so to know how to type in the HTML. You're going to learn the HTML as you use the tools. The tools are going to get you there, but at least now you know what the tools are writing. They're writing this language for the most part on the page. We're going to talk about CSS, and you'll get an understanding of it. And then, like I said, later in this course, we're going to look at tools and how they apply these pieces. So the discussion we've had on HTML for now will suffice, and you will learn HTML more detailed as you move forward. Looking at the syntax of it, it is unique in the way it looks. This is what HTML looks like. Okay, so now what we're going to do is remove this HTML from here. taking the font tags back out. Let's go ahead and save that file. Let's bring open our other page and go backwards here and remove the font tags from here also. But we would like the web page itself, its entire text, to be Arial. And we can accomplish that with the use of Cascading Style Sheets language. And what it'll introduce to us is the ability to create a separate file with instructions in it that we will add a link to in here with a link tag, not the href. It's not the same thing as a hyperlink, but we'll be linking to a .css file so that when this page loads into the browser, that instruction says go and grab the CSS file and load it into memory and use its instructions to affect the elements on the page. The beauty of that is that we have one file now with instructions in it that all of our pages use, and therefore if we need to make a change, it's just going to be in that one location. So this concludes the HTML introduction. Of course, you have some learning to do as we move forward, especially as we start dealing with the tools. But you do have that foundation now. You recognize what it looks like, and with practice, it'll become more obvious. Now what we need to do is move into adding the second language that we want to talk about, which is Cascading Style Sheets language. So taking a look at the Cascading Style Sheets language part, you'll get an introduction. We'll be moving directly from here, from this point, going into that language.